Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Split City podcast. Today, our guest is Paul Bradbury. Hello, Paul.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. As many of you know, and even if you don't, you will learn it now. He's one of the most famous internationals in Croatia, right?
I was once called the most famous Englishman on Hvar, but there were only three of us, so it wasn't that famous.
Okay, well, first question right off the bat. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what made you come here?
To Croatia, I'm basically born in Manchester. I travelled a lot around the world, went to 95 countries, lived in 10, just sold my house in the UK at the age of 32. And I was working as a humanitarian aid worker in Somaliland, in northern Somalia. And I was thinking, where will I go and live now? Where will I buy my house? And I wanted to be by the sea, somewhere in Europe, not in the UK. And I came downstairs to get another gin and tonic from the terrace, and CNN had this Reclama Croatia, the Mediterranean as it once was. And that basically was it. And I followed a few leads, and about 6 weeks later, I ended up in Jelsa on Hvar, and there was only one house for sale, so I bought it. And it was. I arrived in Velegospor on August the 15th, and it was really, really busy. And I thought, this place is paradise. I came back a month later to sign the final contract, and the place was quite empty, and I couldn't understand where everybody was. And then the next month, my favourite restaurant closed, and I was like, when are you reopening? And they said, in May. And I was like, what kind of business is closed 7 months a year? And then everything started closing down, and then I realised that this beautiful thing I'd seen was only 6 weeks of the year, and the rest of it was quite quiet. So that was how I first came to Croatia. Yeah.
And obviously, the quiet part didn't scare you off.
Well, honestly, I got quite terrified because I was wondering, by the time December comes, will anything be open? Because I mean, there wasn't a single restaurant open in the town or anything. And then I realised I didn't have an address. There was no street name or anything. And I also found out in October that I didn't have any heating, because it was a very spontaneous. It was just a summer house I bought. And so I went to the post office with my contract to say, can you tell me what my address is, please? Because I need somebody to send me something. And they looked at the contract and they said, did you really buy that house? And I was like, yes. Did you really pay the full price? And I was like, maybe. And then they said, oh, and this house belongs to a guy called Pantagan. And everybody started laughing. And I was like, what's Pantagan? And this is a Dalmatian dialect word for rat. So I bought the house from Mr. Rat, that was his nickname. And they said, are you going to live here all year? And I said, yeah. And they just all laughed at me. And I was like, what have I done? You know, so that's kind of how it started. So yeah, I took it every day as it came when I started. But yeah, gradually I came to like it. I actually prefer Dalmatian islands in winter than in summer. It's just a beautiful place to be when the borough goes, and it's very cleansing. I really like it. Yeah.
Yeah, that means you turned into quite a local, basically.
Well, I've picked more olives than most foreigners. I've been to the grape harvest, and I've been to the lavender harvest. My feet were smelling in a tub of lavender. So yeah, I try and do as many local experiences as I can at least once. Some of them only once. But yeah, Croatia's a phenomenal country, and I don't think really that Croats necessarily understand or appreciate what they've got. That's not in a criticising way. It's just, you know, wherever you are, you never really understand what makes things so special that foreigners see. And I guess the biggest example, I was saying last night at the book launch, of this was I have a friend on Hvar called Ante, and he has a luxury tourism business. And a few years ago, he had a group of New York Jews, tourists, and he took them on a luxury tour. He took them to an olive grove, and they had a pecker and olive oil tasting, beautiful views, everything else. And this one guy said, "Excuse me, is that a lemon tree over there?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Would it be okay if I picked a lemon?" And he says, "Pick 6 if you like," you know. So he picked 6. He's like, "Thank you." And at the end of the week, he said, "This was the best tour of my life, but I want you to know the absolute highlight of this whole, it wasn't the food, it wasn't the views, it wasn't the wine tasting, it wasn't the sailing. It was the moment when I picked that lemon from a tree, because I live in New York, and the only lemons I ever see are in supermarkets and cocktail bars. So to actually have that connection with nature was just priceless. And this, Auntie was like, oh, so this is an experience that costs me nothing, and this guy's going to pay a lot for it. So then he started making tours for those sort of authentic experiences, and they were huge because people want to try that. And my family down in Jelsa, my father-in-law had a field. He would just bring all the food home, grow it himself, and when it came to the evening, I would send one of the kids out into the garden to pick a lemon for the gin and tonic on the terrace. You just can't get that back in Manchester.
True. Sometimes we even forget about those things, and
Yeah.
it's true that we don't appreciate them enough.
Yeah.
But it's good to hear it from others. It makes you look around and see what you got.
Yeah, for sure.
And as far as business goes, I mean, you landed here, so obviously somehow you needed to support yourself. So I guess that's how Total Croatia News came to be?
Well, no, I came and I had some savings, and I had no real plan. And I met a local girl. So I was supposed to be going off to be an aid worker elsewhere, but I ended up staying and didn't really go anywhere for almost 20 years. And the first thing we did was real estate, because it was 2003, 2004. That was the real boom. And Miranda was a law student, and I had access to the English market. So we started a real estate agency, and it was hugely successful. And we were selling 2-3 properties a week. It was really, really busy. And then that whole thing sort of died, and then I was trying, now what do I do? And so for the next 6-7 years, I was trying to import things, get franchises for things. I was doing real estate down in Albania and stuff like that, and I was still trying to sort of find something. And then I was having a coffee on the main square in 2010, and this tourist sat next to me and said, this is a beautiful island, but the information is so terrible. And I'd heard this about 200 times, so I called the waiter, ordered a beer and a piece of paper and a pen, and I decided I would write the first modern guidebook for the island of Hvar from scratch. And I had no idea what I was doing, and I just made a list of how to get here, what to see, where to stay, that kind of stuff. And in 3 months, I'd written a 250-page guidebook for Hvar. It really wasn't that great in parts, but I self-published it, 500 copies, and it sold out, and everybody was like, "This is amazing stuff." And then my wife said, "Why don't you do a portal, and do it online, and maybe get some sponsorship from businesses, tourist boards, and so on?" So that's how I started with Total Croatia. That was my first portal here, and I wrote about 9,000 articles just about Hvar. Probably more than anyone in history, and I won't say they were very good, all of them, but I'm very proud of some really niche articles I did. I did a blogger's guide to the plug sockets of Jadrolinnia ferries, and I got, which wasn't widely read, but I did get 2 emails from bloggers thanking me for that, and that kind of had a meaning. So basically, and it was amazing because people would say there's nothing to write. And I started in October when the season was finishing, and I was writing 6 articles a day about different aspects of life on Hvar. And so people would invite me to places to write about things, and locals were like, "Oh, we never knew this about the island," and so it became very popular. We brought the New York Times to Hvar, we brought the Sunday Times to Hvar, and it was just a real privilege to really discover this amazing island that I'd never heard of before I bought the house. I'd heard the name for the first time 2 days before I came to the island, and I was in Jelsa, and I had no idea that in Hvar town was all the A-list celebrities and all this sort of stuff. No idea whatsoever. So that was fantastic. And then in 2012, I realised that somebody said to me that Split doesn't have an English language portal. I said it must do. It's a big city, and it didn't. So. With the help of a Croatian friend and a girl who was here, we started Total Split, which was the first portal in English for Split. And then it kind of kept going, and I was chasing the money always. And then in 2015, I realised that we didn't have a English language news portal for Croatia, even though we were in the EU. And I was thinking, how hard can it be? So I just jumped in 2 feet forward and started this news portal, really not knowing what I was doing. And I'm still trying to figure it out 7 years later. But It's good. It's been a really amazing project because it's taken me all over Croatia to places that a lot of Croats have never heard of, and experiences, and you know, we work really hard, but I absolutely love what I do. Yeah, I have to say.
That's great to hear, and I mean, it's obvious because most, I guess, especially in the beginning, any word that got out about Croatia was thanks to you guys. So, so it's a great work that you've been doing all these years.
Well, it's also, you know, some people say I'm a really good writer. I don't think I am necessarily. I think I'm the only person that's telling these stories, and these stories are amazing, you know. And because nobody tells them, and I start telling them, well, this is great, and then somebody else then contacts me and says, have you heard about this and this and this? And so, you know, now the stories write themselves, and they come to my inbox, and all I have to do is check it out, do a bit of research, and maybe go visit the place and then write it. And people think I'm always discovering something new, and I'm just curious. And I think the thing about Croatia is it is such a diverse country, and it has so many amazing stories, but people here aren't necessarily curious. And if you start scratching, you'll find the most phenomenal stories. Wherever you go. I mean, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who lives in Vinkovci, which is a town I'd never heard of 5 years ago, and it's actually the oldest continuously inhabited town in Europe, right? So amazing. And he said, come. So I came to visit him in his town, and in the middle of the town, by the old town, there was a red London telephone box. And I was like, what the hell's that? And he says, oh, that belongs to Steve. I said, who's Steve? He says, Steve is the guy from Leeds who lives here. And I was like, why a telephone box? A working telephone box. This is one of, I think, only 5 public telephones still working in Croatia. And you get your card from the Tisak and you put it in and you can actually call. And he said, oh, he came here during the war to fight, and he stayed, and he's got an English pub in a field somewhere. I was like, what? And so I checked it out, and I found it, and I drove out to this field literally in the middle of nowhere, outside the village of Andriaševci, close to Vinkovci. And there, in total isolation, is a pub called the White Boar, with a sign, everything else. You go into the pub, it's got all the tankards, it's got photographs of Queen Elizabeth at the age of 17, it's got cricket balls. I mean, it's a totally authentic English pub. And then I met Steve, and you know, the guy's just got an incredible story. We just did a video podcast with him. But that's just like walking down the street, you see something, you start asking.
Yeah.
And if you start asking, it always leads to somewhere else. And then meeting Steve, probably the most surreal night of my life in Croatia was November the 18th, 2019. So I went to the Vukovar Remembrance Parade because I wanted to see what it was like, because nobody actually writes about it. They all say, oh, this will happen, but then what is it actually like from the morning to the end? So I went and I was with the Dubrovački trombonieri from Dubrovnik, and so they gave me good access to things. And at the end of the parade, all the foreign veterans, that, you know, with their eye patches, without their arms and legs and stuff, they all go to this English pub in a field in the middle of nowhere with their black shirts and their hoss and their zalonsbremni and all that. And they have a barbecue and they all sort of reminisce. And so I'm just surrounded by all these, in a field literally in the middle of nowhere, drinking English beer, having a barbecue with all these guys that fought. It was just amazing.
Crazy experience. And any of those experiences summed up in your book?
My book, yes. This is the book here. It's called Croatia, a Survival Kit for Foreigners. And it started with a LinkedIn post. So I follow this really cool Croatian lady called Dina Čelaković, and she's a copywriter who's grown her own following from 700 to 50,000 just by giving out free advice about copywriting. And she said, you need, in order to make money and generate leads, you need 3 things. You need a laptop, a LinkedIn account, and a niche. So I thought, I've got a laptop, I've got a LinkedIn account, and what's my niche? And I thought Croatia. So I was just about to have my 20th anniversary in Croatia. So I decided to do a series on LinkedIn called 20 Ways That Croatia Changed Me in 20 Years. So I made a list of things, and I decided to start writing LinkedIn articles for the first time, rather than just posting links on LinkedIn. And the first one was how Croatia changed me was doing business in Dalmatia. And as you can imagine, and so
I read it, but I can also imagine.
Trying to do business in Dalmatia, and so I put this on LinkedIn. We got 500 likes, and I was like, "What's this? This is amazing!" And people were like, "This is really, really great. Please write more." So the next one I wrote was about the culture of the olive harvest, not the actual picking, but the community and the tradition and that sort of stuff. And I got an email from Australia from this guy who said, "I'm crying. I'm from Dalmatia. Like I left 30 years ago, and this really sort of tugged me." And so I kept going. I wrote about raising kids, about safety, about wine, about the mighty state of Uzbekistan, about what it's like to be sued by a state institution, what it's like running an English portal, what it's like living on a Dalmatian island for 13 years, and so on, and Croatian language, obviously. And things got really, really, really popular. And after about 7 of these, this woman from Amsterdam, Croatian lady, said, "I've been living in Amsterdam, I've been watching these. We've just opened an office in Zagreb with 40 international staff. I'm desperately looking for a book that explains the insanity of Croatia in a way that foreigners can understand. Would you consider turning these into a book?" And I was like, "Well, actually, if you'll buy 40 copies, then yeah, okay." And she said, "I will." So then basically I started turning these things into a book with an introduction and a bit more effort and so on. And then I realised that here was an opportunity that you have all this remote work shift is really happening, and the Remaxes and Infobips are importing skilled labour from the West into Croatia now, and they can't get enough people. And these people are coming and they're lost because there is no book. So I thought I would do my sort of 20 chapters which explains the madness and beauty of Croatia. I describe Croatia as Absurdistan with the best lifestyle in Europe, with a sprinkling of Balkan insanity on top. You know? That's kind of it. It's kind of addictive. But then the second section was to be a really practical thing, like how to open a bank account, how to find a dentist, what to do with your pets, and stuff like that. And I could have written that, but my editor Lauren Simmons at Total Croatia News, she's brilliant at that kind of stuff. She's written a lot of it already for our portal. So I asked her if she wanted to co-author it, and she did. And so she wrote her half of the book in 3 weeks. So from the first LinkedIn article to the finished product was about 6 weeks in total. And then we tried to get it published in Croatia.
We will need another podcast for that.
I'm actually writing a book about how to publish a book in Croatia. It's just insanity.
Insanity.
Yeah, but finally we got it legally done. I've managed to get into the shops. It's available online at Amazon. It's available online at Hoću knjigu and Školska knjiga here, so people can actually buy it. But just the steps that have gone to. Well, for example, you know, my company's published the book, so and then I need to have a warehouse space of 5 square meters, which fulfills minimal technical inspection of water, sewage, and electricity. If I'm selling a PDF only, I need a warehouse of 5 square meters, which fits. I mean, it's just wonderful.
But you need it for all the documents, you know, for pechat and all of that.
Yeah. And then,
Okay, and now let's go to the sort of questions that I want to talk to you about regarding Croatia. We'll start with the bad things. 3 things you think Croatia does not well.
Mindset. There's what I call there's a default negative mindset in Croatia, and so everybody thinks that everything is terrible here. A Croatian can forgive you anything except success. So the people who are doing successful stuff and good stuff want to stay below the radar, because as soon as they come up, they get attacked and shot down and criticised and so on. And I think it's very true in Croatia that what works in every other country in the world will not necessarily work in Croatia. Yeah, and so people just think everything is terrible here. And then actually, if you get through that mindset and you find the bubbles of positivity and you connect with those, and you make peace with Uzbekistan and you find a way to do that, this really is the most incredible country in the world, and the lifestyle and the people. And there are so many incredibly positive people here. I honestly don't have enough hours in the day to enjoy all the fun I should have with the people I meet. And negativity is just a mindset. And everybody says, yeah, but it's okay because you're a rich foreigner. And I'm like, I'm not a rich foreigner. It's actually harder for me because I started Total Croatia with 100 euros in my pocket, not speaking the local language that well, not having all the visa that everybody else has. And I got it because I had an idea and I had determination and I saw it through. And a lot of people here just hide behind the fact it's all terrible, there's no jobs. And there are jobs out there. And now you've got the whole remote working, talent is in huge demand. And so I would say that really is the biggest problem. People talk about corruption as a problem. It is a problem, of course it is. And nepotism and all that. But if you switch your mindset into I'm going to be positive, I'm going to look for the shoots of positivity, you'll find it in Croatia. And there's more and more people, and they're connecting. And now you have, I think Uzbekistan finally will go because it's going to be killed by two viruses, one of transparency and one of technology. And these are on our side moving forward. And you have no excuse in the modern age not to educate yourself or train yourself because there are so many tools out there. Find a niche that you want to do, really put your determination, and you can do it easily. Especially with you can do it from you're lying in bed rather than having to go and find an office job. So
Sure. And any bubbles of positivity here in Split that you discovered?
I mean, loads. I love what you guys are doing. I think, and I'm a huge fan of Michael Freer and his social enterprise stuff. And I love people here who want to do things. So we had this initiative to do the Split Winter Tourism Roundtable, where I started writing about why doesn't Split have winter tourism, and then the first comment I got was from a guy who was a tour guide in the 1980s in Split, and he said we used to have flights 12 months a year. We used to have Americans coming for 6 weeks in January for the nature, for the food, for the culture, all the things that we still have, and it all stopped in the war and it never restarted again. So then I published that interview and people were shocked. And then I offered a free article to any Split business that was offering a winter tourism package. And I asked them their thoughts on why don't we have, so this got into quite a good conversation. And then Yasmin from Chops Grill said, could you organise a round table? And I was like, well, maybe I'm not the best person because I'm being sued by the tourist board, but I said, okay, so I did. So I invited the Minister of Tourism, the Regional Tourist Board, the Local Tourist Board, the airports, the five-star hotels, the Restaurant Association, a couple of DMCs and a couple of tourism consultants, and it was huge politics, I mean huge, but we got them all to come round the table at Chops Grill, asked me to give everyone lunch, and some of the stakeholders were meeting each other for the first time, and everybody came sceptical, but everybody stayed for lunch and an extra hour and kept talking. And then we had another meeting where we were looking at, okay, we need content. There's no point putting flights if there's nothing open. So we invited 6 or 7 people who are doing stuff, like Nick Hathaway from 45 Degrees Sailing, who's really passionate about winter sailing, and he gave a presentation on the opportunities and stuff like that. So if we can get that stuff moving, and what's happened already in the year is KLM now are flying 12 months a year into Split, which is a huge thing. We're also in discussion with a low-cost airline about doing 81 flights from Amsterdam, Paris and London, 3 weeks either side of the season, just to see if that works. And they need an amount of money, which is not crazy. So these things are happening, and with what you guys are doing and other people, all these bubbles that have been operating on their own are actually realising that if they connect or they see something doing something, then they're connecting. And so there's actually a really, really, really exciting ecosystem in the whole of Croatia. And obviously, because we write about that a lot with Total Croatia News, we get a lot of people come to us. And so I get to see quite a lot of stuff. And then I connect people. I say, well, what about this? And, Jan de Jong's another great connector for that. And so it's a great time to be alive, honestly.
True. So aside from that, any other things Croatia does well?
Croatia has, my slogan for Croatia would not be Croatia full of life, which doesn't mean anything. But I would call it Croatia, your safe, authentic lifestyle destination. Okay, and so the opportunity for Croatia now is massive, because what people take for granted here is just how safe Croatia is. just how safe it is. And so people now are coming from Australia, diaspora coming from Australia, and moving to Croatia to bring up their kids because of the safety factor. That's the number one thing. I'm not passing comment either way, but this is the whitest country in the world. During the World Cup in 2018, there was a really bizarre article about Croatia, which said, "Why does Croatia not have any black players?" And it was like, this is a racist country. And I was just like, and then the comment was, "Why does Nigeria have no white players?" You know, I mean, it was that kind of stuff. But it got me thinking, and we have had a black players in the Croatian team, and there was a white guy who played for Nigeria. But what got me thinking was, you know, I've travelled the world, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in Japan, and I'm looking around and I'm like, everyone's white, you know, and I hadn't really sort of noticed and stuff. And when you see a black person, it was just like, that's a bit kind of weird. So if you grew up with that, then it must be quite a strange thing. And so I contacted the Ministry of the Interior and I said, "Can you give me statistics? How many foreigners live in Croatia?" Okay? And by foreigner, I mean it can be a Bosnian and a Serb that doesn't have dual citizenship. Yeah? So we have a population of 4 million, and they sent me the statistics, and the number of foreigners like living here on temporary or permanent residency was less than 30,000. And this makes us 99.3% Croatian,
Yeah.
of which, you know, the 99% are white. And of those 30,000, you can guarantee that about at least 80% of those are going to be. So a lot of South Africans are coming here because they're looking for that kind of thing. So I think safety and lifestyle is massive. People now can work from anywhere in the world as long as they have a decent internet connection and the time zone fits. And people want to have authentic experiences. They want to try new things that they can't try anywhere else. And Croatia is the world champion of authentic experiences. 12 months a year, all over the country, there's always something going on. And so, you know, if you can package that safety, that lifestyle, and those authentic experiences, and we have, you know, great nature, food and wine, affordability, accessibility, good Wi-Fi. It's all here. And this now is an opportunity to bring in not only remote workers, but the mindset of remote workers, because the young people here are all dreaming of going to America, and if those Americans come here and they can start explaining why Croatia is better, then maybe they'll start thinking twice. Maybe they'll inspire people with the jobs they do and so on like that. So it comes back to the biggest battle, I think, is mindset.
True. And well, I witnessed some of the Americans telling our high schoolers to stay here and enjoy it. So
yeah,
it's already happening.
Yes, Steve Centelensko, I guess you've met.
Yeah.
Steve, so he actually said in his 1 year in Croatia, his highlight was being asked to go into a high school and speak to kids who started with like, "Why are you here?" And he was like, "Why do you want to leave? This place is amazing." And by the end of the hour, he'd planted a couple of seeds. Now imagine if on a daily basis you're exposed to that and you're meeting cool people who want to get into the community, who want to give back, who want to do things. It will have a really positive impact on the mindset.
True. And to wrap up our little morning chat, I would like to ask you 5 firecracker questions about Croatia.
Okay, right.
You ready?
Yeah.
Favorite thing to eat in Slavonia?
That would be Kulin, obviously, but Čobanec.
Favorite place you visited in Istria?
Grožnjan.
The most wonderful landmark in Split?
Grganinski.
Your favorite island?
I would have to say Hvar, but Korčula is pretty good.
Korčula is pretty good. And last, your favorite Croatian football player?
Boško Balaban.
Awesome answer.
Because I'm an Aston Villa fan, and we bought him for an extortionate amount of money, and I think he's top of the list of the worst ever Premier League footballers in history. And then we bought a second Croatian player a few years ago, Lovro Kalinic from Belgium, and he was the Belgian goalkeeper of the year. He was shockingly bad. He was so shocking. We loaned him out to Hajduk Split. I think he's now moved permanently. But so my relationship with Croatian footballers with my team Aston Villa is fairly poor. But yeah.
Thank you very much for this lovely chat this morning. Were the questions difficult about Croatia?
No, they were good questions. Good questions. Excellent. You can stay for the next show.
Great to hear that. Thank you very much, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much.
And you guys, if you want more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and see you on the next episode of our podcast.